Hi, in this video I'll be showing you how to create a 1x1 rib stitch like this. So if you haven't already seen our how to cast on, how to knit, how to purl, how to cast off videos, then go back onto our channel and check those videos out. I'll pop them into the description as well with the links. So let's get started. We're going to use some 10mm bamboo knitting needles and some super chunky weight grass green yarn. So this rib stitch is made up of knit and purl alternating stitches. So knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, and so on. That will only work if you use an even number of stitches. So I've decided to use 12 stitches here to show you the effect. If you use an odd number of stitches and always start with knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, you will actually end up creating seed stitch, which is also a lovely stitch, but if you're aiming to get rib stitch, it's not what you want. Rib stitch is a reversible stitch, so it looks the same from both sides, like this, and it's often used for cuffs, the ribbing on the bottom of jumpers, cardigans, and also the ribbing on the base of hats. So anyway, enough of me talking, let's get into the video. So you want to make sure that you've got your even number of stitches cast on. The first stitch will always be a knit stitch, so hopefully you should already know how to do this. If you're not sure about how to create knit stitch, then hop onto the link in the description of this video on more guidance for that. The second stitch is purl stitch. So what you need to remember here is to bring your working yarn around to the front of your needle like this before you do the purl stitch, because your working yarn should always be in front of your needles for purl. And then the next stitch will be knit. So again, the working yarn needs to go behind the needle. So this can be quite fiddly. Once you get the hang of it, you will have to use your left hand to hold both needles, and you just keep on alternating those stitches, making sure that your working yarn is behind the knit stitch and the working yarn is in front the purl stitch, like this. And you just keep on going, one knit, one purl, one knit, one purl. Like I say, it can be a little bit fiddly when you're first doing it. Once you get the hang of it, it becomes a bit easier and you get into the rhythm of it. And then you end, if you have an even number of stitches, on a purl stitch. So let's go a little bit deeper into the anatomy of these stitches. So you can see here, this is the knit stitch and this is the purl stitch with the little bump. So I like to think of these as like a little scarf around your stitch. So you've got the knit stitch, the purl stitch with the bump, knit stitch, purl stitch with the bump, and so on and so on and so on. Now from the other side of the needle, see this one here? This was our first stitch. Oh, let me get that in shot. This was our first stitch. So the back of the knit stitch actually has a bump. The back of the purl stitch will be a V. The back of the knit stitch is a bump, V, bump, V, bump, V, and so on and so on. So that's where you get this effect of the bumps, the V's, the bumps, the V's. So hopefully that helps you to understand a little bit more the anatomy of knit stitches and purl stitches. So the process of ribbing involves knitting a purl stitch on the return and purling a knit stitch on the return. So our last stitch on our last row was a purl stitch, but the first stitch on the next row will be a knit stitch. So let's just do one more row for practicing. So because the first stitch is a knit stitch, the working yarn is behind, then the working yarn goes in front for the purl stitch, like this, then behind for the knit stitch, and in front purl stitch, and behind. Always try and make sure your stitches on your left needle are near to the tip of the needle to make it easier to have an even tension. And we'll just keep on going, alternating our working yarn from the front to the back until we reach the end of the row. And again, we end on a purl stitch, like this. So you can really start to see how that ribbed texture is developing. And the great thing about ribbed stitch is it's very stretchy. I won't stretch it too far because it'll come off my needle. But you can see here it's really stretchy, which is why it's quite often used for cuffs and collars and for the beginning sections of jumpers at the bottom. So hopefully you've enjoyed that video and it's been helpful. Find our next video for how to create seed stitch. Goodbye.